welcome everyone. It's great to have you with us today. Thank you for joining live Kabbalah Q&A with Senior Instructor Tony Kosinec. We really look forward to hearing your questions today. Please, whatever platform you're viewing from, post your question in the chat. We have an expert tech team that will gather those questions, and I'll be asking those here. We do ask you to minimize extraneous comments. It just makes it easier for our tech team to gather all your questions, and we certainly don't want to miss any. Also, you're welcome to share where you're viewing from today. If you just want to share your country or city and country, whatever you prefer. We love to know how much we're blanketing the world with this very special connection today. So, Tony, so wonderful to be together again. Always great to see you.
Extraneous? Let's stretch out the extraneousness. Good to be with you, Mary, and with all of you. Why are you tuning into this? I mean, why are you even interested in this? What are you looking for? You know, I observe who comes to Kabbalah, who studies it, and the various paths that they take to get here. Really what happens to a person is that we're all born with this need, with an intrinsic need to fulfill our life, but we don't know what that is. We have an emotion about the purpose of life, a sense of something that we think of as much more than this world, something spiritual. Everybody has this. It's something imprinted in us, but it is either awake or it's dormant. Some people have it awake. Most people have it awake when they're a child. They ask, why am I here? You'll ask your parents, why am I here? What is this for? Where did it come from? And you get these kind of blank stares from your parents, or you get some answers that may start you on a path. That is a very powerful question when you're a child. It's fundamentally the only question when you're a child. Or for some people, it happens a little bit later. And because of this, a person who starts out with an awakened, what the Kabbalists call point in the heart, this aspect of the whole reality that's embedded in the heart, like one strand of DNA or one gene in DNA, you begin looking. For some people, it becomes the most important thing, and for other people, it just kind of turns off when you don't get answers or when you get distracted by other things. But if you're a seeker, then you start looking at the world for clues. Where might I find this? Some people go down this path or that path, but it's because of their basic character, the things that are the other genes that are in the heart of the person. And they might see it as religion, or they might see this path as, it's a difficult path, because you don't even have a definition of spirituality. You only have an emotional impression and a need. So for some, according to their character, they begin looking, say, at, well, maybe it's meditation, or maybe spirituality is magic, or maybe it's like the pinnacle of science, or maybe it's detachment and meditation, maybe it's healing. And this is a sincere feeling in the heart. And a person begins traveling, finds something, works with it. And if they're a true seeker and they're honest, they will begin to see that no matter where they look, the barrier that they encounter, why what they have found or what they find doesn't fulfill them is that they're basically the problem. That there's something about the way that we are that prevents us from experiencing reality in a whole way, and that the heart also is very wise, and it tells us whether or not the thing that we're dealing with, that we have defined as spirituality, is working. You know, is it making this change required in us to be able to become whatever that spirituality might be? And the whole path is filled with all of these encounters with ideas and beliefs and so on. For the seeker that arrives at Kabbalah, they take each one of these things that they've experienced, and it helps form a more and more and more accurate assessment of what spirituality might be. What would that thing be that would make the change in the person? And what is that thing in the person that is preventing the sensation that we are actually fulfilling our life to the highest degree, to the depth of this actual need, this point in the heart that we can't put out, this hunger, this desire, this intention? Because it's not any of those things that we think. You know, it's not religion, it's not healing, it's not the things of this world. It actually is that same point in the heart, but to its completeness. How do we make every part of our heart like that part in us that knows, that feels, and will only settle for the ability to change ourselves and feel that what we are doing is actually fulfilling the purpose of our life and fulfilling everything else? These are the people who come to the door of Kabbalah. So I'm answering my stupid question at the beginning: why are you here? This is why you're here. Because you want to find out, well, what is this? You already have some kind of a sense about it. So please ask your questions, and out of that, we'll connect with each other. We will entice that point in the heart to open beyond where it has opened to this point, and perhaps it will hear things that it never heard before. So Mary, let's start with the questions.
Okay, great, Tony. Coming from Facebook, Reiner Gerhard Lichtenberger is asking, how can Kabbalah help to solve financial problems?
Well, a problem is where you feel that what's going on is wrong, and you can't make use out of the situation, whether it's a situation of where you're full or you're empty of what you may need, and all of the things that happen inside of you in your attitude towards that. Kabbalah is not essentially about changing or manipulating the material level of things. Your financial situation is a necessity, and you should have what you need. I hope that you will find what you need, and I'm sure that you will. But it's about how we use situations that seem to be not good for us, and understand what their true purpose is, and be able, as a result of responding not from our ego, but from an appreciation and an understanding of what forces are at work, what law is developing us that would bring us financial difficulty in order to do what? In order to develop us how? So what Kabbalah does is it shows a person ultimately how to use the force of nature that's working on us all the time, that we think of as a bad or a negative or an empty force, and understand what's truly under development in us, and how to use that in a beneficial way. Mary.
Okay, next question from YouTube. This is wants to know. Tony, can you explain the Kabbalah reasoning of rebirth?
You mean reincarnation? Well, there's a rebirth. Let's look at it a couple of different ways. Rebirth happens when our perception of reality alters, where we stop seeing ourselves in the form that we have seen ourselves in, which is through a kind of a self-concerned, self-centered point of view. This thing that makes our life difficult separates us from the greater reality and limits everything that we do according to a program running in us that is always thinking, what can I get out of this? So rebirth is to be able to function above our first limited incarnation of perception and desire and so on. But this is also true, that's true on the micro level, it's true on the macro level as well, that if while we are under development, we are constantly going through new incarnations, and if we don't achieve this grasp of the greater reality, the opening of the heart to the degree where we see how reality is functioning and how completely connected we are to everything and everything else, and that there is no limitation in life. There is only life after life after life. If we haven't reached this and in a conscious way, then we go through a rebirth on an egoistic level, on a physical, on a material level. That is part of the evolutionary process that develops us, that brings us eventually to complete fulfillment and to a connection with everything, which is what eternity really is. It is a complete interconnection with everything. Okay.
Okay, also from Facebook, Dan Crosstall is asking, does Kabbalah incorporate aliens? What he means by this is intelligent life on other planets.
Wait, I'm waiting for the answer from the mothership. Hold on. Okay. It includes everything, every machination of our imaginations. It includes every image that the heart projects as to what is alien. The whole process of enlightenment, of completion, of fulfillment, is to stop feeling aspects of experience as if they were outside of ourselves, as though they were alien. And all the distance that we see in the universe, when we stand on a dark beach and look up at the stars in the sky and imagine that it goes on for something that we can't even grasp, but as if almost forever in depth, that distance is made out of a feeling in the heart that we would rather be separated than be connected. And in order for the ego to feel good about it, it wants the distance to be immeasurable. There is actually nothing alien. There is only disowned aspects of the creature, the single creature that was ever created. Because the only thing that was created is the will to receive. There are two forces in reality. It's actually one force and two sides of the same force. The first force, the primary force, the creator force, is the force that's called the intention to bestow. The giving consciousness, awareness, power, force that makes everything and takes care of everything and evolves everything. Well, what did it make? It made a single, and that is a desire and an intention. It made a single thing. This thing that it made is the will to receive. The will to receive feels itself as all of the different levels of nature, as separated as the cosmos. It is everything other than the will to bestow and is the opposite of that. It's a single creature that is being evolved from the sense of complete separation, in which there are vast stretches of space and planets and everything not me, to the point where it evolves to recognize its true identity, which is a single desire, opposite, which is a force itself, opposite the desire and the force, the creative force. until it recognizes a way in which it can reconnect when it becomes whole with the whole opposite force that created it. And there are no, in truth, there are no aliens. There is no space. There is no distance. There is only the shattered human heart and the desire either to connect or to be disconnected. Mary?
Okay, you were mentioning intention, Tony. Kevin Long wants to know, what is the best way to intentionally bestow to another?
Well, if it's intention, then you are thinking of that person. You know, you care what they feel. You don't know what they need, you know, so you don't know what to give. And you don't have what to give anyway. The law of nature contains everything and gives everything. Our problem is our disconnection from that. The way in which you bestow to others is to connect with them. And fundamentally, you see others as, you have to learn this. This is not just something, oh, I'm going to decide to do this and just do it. You have to be trained. You have to train yourself. You have to be willing to do it, and you have to learn how to do it eventually with other people, because it's a real thing. It's a real methodology. It's a real science, and it's something that you can achieve. But essentially, you come to feel the other person as though they're your child. Like you have the same attitude towards them. And even as a parent, I mean, of course, you're providing things for your child as a parent, but in your heart, you're constantly aware that they're there, that they need something. You feel their whole life. You care about their life. You experience them so fully that if they hurt themselves, it hurts you. And you're always afraid that something, you try to take steps, your heart is always a step ahead, thinking about how are they? Will they be all right here? Will they be all right there? We want to develop that. We want to sort of ask of the law, ask in our heart in a real way for the well-being of another person. Because in the end, it's not us that does that thing. We can do things for people, but the thing that really takes care of a person and really gives to the person is the thing they really need, which is the awareness and reconnection to the whole, for them to also be able to love in that way. So it's more like asking, it's more like praying than that's the closest thing to an intentional thing. Not for some, I got a specific idea of what the outcome should be, but in general for the well-being and fulfillment of that person. Once you learn the methodology, the practical aspects become much more clear, and it's more, you're actually working with parts of yourself in relation to the other person, and it becomes a lot more tangible as to how that all works. But there's no one as wise as the experienced, and you have to learn to do this and challenge yourself to do it. And then you begin to see and feel how bestowal, what it is, where it actually functions between you and another and the whole.
Hey, Tony, Crystal James, viewing on YouTube, is asking a clarifying question on bestowal. Tony, can you please give an example of receiving to bestow and bestowing to bestow?
Well, I can't give you an example of pure bestowal. It is a spiritual thing, and that is a physical or material question. But I can tell you what receiving in order to bestow is like, although this is not it. If Bala Salam, great Kabbalist of the 20th century, gives this example of a person who invites a friend to their home for a meal, and they prepare everything they know that this person loves, wants, needs. They know what would give them pleasure, so they make it just spectacular and just full of all the things that would give pleasure to the friend. And the friend comes over and looks at the meal and realizes that this friend has done everything for them and they have done nothing. They're just taking in this situation. So they don't want to take it. They feel shame. But the person who prepared all this out of their love for their friend is, you have to eat. If you eat, it'll completely fulfill me because I did this for you. And so, not because the friend wants to eat the stuff, because they already feel, oh my goodness, I'm not giving anything. I can't accept this. The person takes and eats something and shows their pleasure to the host. In this case, because they can't do anything but receive in this situation, and yet the intention behind the reception, the eating, the fulfillment, the enjoyment, is not in order to fulfill themselves, but in order to fulfill the host who wanted them to enjoy. That's actually a higher degree than bestowing in order to bestow. But that's a much more difficult thing to explain.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Next question is from a Facebook viewer, Paula Flynn. How can I be sure I am connecting with the Creator when I am still preoccupied with the self?
Well, you don't have any choice. That's your nature, and you're correct. The whole methodology is to help people out of the misconception that you can have a relationship and a meaningful and spiritual connection with the Creator directly. That's not how you get there. You can have that, but it doesn't happen to the exclusion of the involvement with others. It only happens through the relationship with other people. Because all of the real challenges, the place in which we feel the resistance of the heart is with our sense of separation from other people. And that's what the method entails. It shows a person how to use all of these resistances. It shows you where your heart's at, not where we imagine our heart is at. Yes, you will always be that way. And feeling that egoism working in us is only a problem, a barrier, and a wall if we don't understand how nature uses this to advance us. We have to understand it. We have to learn how to work above that in order to nonetheless care more about our friends than we do about ourselves. To not be in a process of judgment constantly. Not always be evaluating everything, but to really come from the heart and work over that thing that will always be there, because that thing, that egoism, is a stepping stone. We have to learn, how do you use it that way? How do you use it as a stepping stone and not as a wall and a barrier? So your efforts to overcome that kind of thing are what connect you to the Creator. Something that's got to be learned.
Hey, Tony, the next question comes from Tio. My husband is dying from cancer. What is this type of difficult trying to teach me? Grace under distress? This isn't the end game. How can we develop spirituality during this time?
That kind of a situation is one that, first of all, evokes the most important questions, which you have kind of placed there in your question. And they're not abstract in any way. They are, you have to be able to answer this. It becomes so important for you that everything hangs on it. This is a situation in which the well-being of the other clearly comes first, and yet your heart is breaking. So there is, how do you integrate these two things And how do you work to help someone that you care for that much, regardless of the condition of your heart? What does it take to work in faith rather than in, well, this outcome is going to change this way or that way? No. You have to love in a situation in which there is nothing but resistance. And you have to learn to manage to come from that love, always for that person. That is the basic course of life in this world. I mean, that's the educational course. But that's it in a nutshell. So all the things that you feel that you need there are what life is really about, why you're here to learn. It's definitely not the end. The world is a school. This is a process. And some things you can consider them, intellectually or abstractly, and then comes the exam, where you're presented with the opportunity to have the right need, because the whole world is made of nothing but desires and needs. And instead of a whole lot of nonsensical things and needs to serve yourself, the primary thing that you're faced with is that it's creating a need in you to understand the law that governs life and to lead you towards using it correctly. Okay?
Hey, thank you, Tony. Paul Marithi is asking, is the path of Kabbalah, in other words, altruism, the only way there is to attain spirituality? I'm asking because I have come across people who are not Kabbalists, but have abilities that I would consider spiritual, such as knowing what a person is doing, even when there is no contact in the physical senses whatsoever with that person.
Those things are not spirituality. They're the byproducts of spirituality. Spirituality being to be able to do in the heart what the general law of the universe, the creator, is doing, which is to want the complete fulfillment of each individual part and the whole, and to be completely connected to concern over all those things and all those people. The byproduct of that type of connection in the heart is that a person feels the general field. And it's the creator, because we're doing the same thing and having the same intention as the law itself, there's no difference between us and the law. The law is altruism. The question is, how do you get to the place where you evolve your heart, that the main desire that is guiding the heart is that desire to bestow and to fulfill without thought of the self. That is the path and the process of spirituality. The byproducts are all the wisdom, all of the connection, all of the knowledge is that field. And so therefore there is a natural access to it. But there are people who have high sensitivity and don't really care very much for other people, but have a high level of sensitivity and can psychically feel these things as physical stuff. That doesn't mean that they're evolved spiritually. It means that they have a high sensitivity in certain areas of the heart. I'll just repeat it again. The definition of spirituality in Kabbalah is the desire to bestow.
Okay, next question comes from Larato Melamabe. If the ultimate goal of evolution for human consciousness is to reach equivalence of form with the Creator, does this mean the planet and humankind will survive long enough for this to happen?
Yeah. Yes, it does. But it depends. I mean, how many people are required to do this? Because how many people exist in reality? We are one creature. The entire world, cosmos, everything is the creature. It's just different levels of the creature. The only purpose for being created opposite the creative force is for this complete fulfillment. It may appear to us, according to our level of development, that good things or bad things are happening, but the only reason that anything is happening is for this evolutionary fulfillment. You know, so it really doesn't matter how it appears. Nothing is lost ever. The creature is completely intact, whether it feels itself as, you know, in its lower forms as rocks, or if it feels itself as plants or as animals, or if it has the conscious level and responsibility of the human and of the higher human that is one and the same thing as the law itself, the evolutionary law. Doesn't matter. It is one creature, and it will do nothing but follow that law, and it will become fulfilled. The problem is how much suffering is involved in this, because the more we drag our heels, the more we resist understanding how nature works with us, and resist learning how to connect so that we are consciously living out the direction that is already there for us, that's predestined for us. Then we feel all these things as though they were hurting us and slamming us and forcing us, because there is nothing but this. There is nothing but this law. It's perfect and pure and whole and complete, and it has given us the opportunity to accept or not. I mean, ultimately we will. But it can happen in a good way as far as our perception goes, or it can happen in a hard way as far as our perception goes. But it is going to happen. It wants us to develop it consciously so that we become partners in this process, servants of it, equal to it, mates with it.
Okay, Tony, before I go on to the next question, let's hear where friends are viewing from in our global community. We have Germany, Indiana, Israel, Cape Town, Nigeria, the UK, Minneapolis, Portugal, England, New Mexico, Missouri, Vancouver Island, British Columbia, San Antonio, Texas, Sydney, Australia, Ethiopia, Mombasa, Kenya, Puerto Rico, they're back, Hanover, Germany, Canada, and Portland, Oregon. Thank you for sharing those. If you haven't yet, please still drop your location in the chat, and I'll announce more a little bit later. So thank you for that. Here's a great question, Tony. They're all great questions, by the way. These are really amazing questions today. Joseph Hernandez is asking, hi, I had one question from long ago. Is Trump mentioned in the Bible? Can we know this by Kabbalah?
Yes, he is. It's in the story of Joshua. They say they blew the trumpets and the walls fell. No, Trump is in your heart. Trump is in our heart. Trump is part of us, and yeah, that's about it.
Okay. From Facebook, Elsie Chapman is asking, we said in classes that the material world is unchangeable, but later on in classes, it was said that we can change things with spiritual actions by bestowing to other people. How can we understand the difference?
I don't know what you mean by the material world is unchangeable. The ego is the creature. It's the only thing that was created. The will to receive is the only thing that was created. That we can't change. That is us. That's our matter. What we can do is understand how to use that in order to not to change the ego, but to change the way in which it's used so that it becomes an action of bestowal, something that I spoke about a few minutes ago. Now, as far as the world changing, the only force that changes the world or how the world appears to us is the intentional level. We see the world that we see because we need that type of resistance, however it may be, in however particular form it is, in order for us to grow that next step. And like I said, either you will be forced, feel that you are forced to it, or one will understand what that is and how to use it. So the intentional force is actually determines whether we see that type of a world or a different type of a world. And there's nothing more powerful than that. So when we evolve that part of us, and you have a large, doesn't even have to be that large a number of people, working on that level for that purpose, the world that we see changes in our perception. There's actually no world out there. There is only the way that we project our own qualities out onto the world, or, whether we love or whether we hate, whether we feel connected or whether we don't feel connected, whether we give or whether we feel that we need stuff. These are all desires and intentions, and they create the kind of world that we see. The governing factor over the sweetness or the bitterness of the world has got to do with whether we're being run by the program called "What's in it for me," or the one that's like the one that created us, which is "How is everything doing?" Because that, if we're using that program, we begin to see a completely different world. We're not afraid of the same things at all. We're only afraid of not being able to fulfill the needs that we see around us in the heart of people and others. The world changes as a result of our intentional shift, because it only will supply to us what we need in order to grow. And if we've grown past that point, it won't push us on that point. I don't know if that's clearer or maybe more confusing, but.
Okay, thank you, Tony. The next question comes from, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, capital JVWTT. How did you discover Kabbalah, Tony?
I was searching from a very young age to understand it, experiences that I couldn't figure out, and I couldn't get any answers to. I don't think there was a moment of discovery. It seemed to me like I always somehow knew about it. I knew that there was something behind the Bible that was, and the Bible is about unity. So I and that was the thing that was really got me. Why is there all this rather than one thing or nothing? And that was my basic question. And there was so much there about unity that I thought, whatever this is behind the writing of the Bible, not in what's in the pages there, because you really can't understand almost anything in there, but what inspired that, all of this stuff about unity. And I had heard, as I got older, there are these wise, the prophets are writing about something in the Bible that you can't understand, because you have to understand what they were actually referring to. They weren't really referring to time and place and person, but they were referring to something else. And then I had heard, when I was a little older, it's about the intention behind actions. And I was looking for, okay, so who knows that? And my search went through Eastern, stuff because it spoke so much also about unity, but I couldn't find anything that I felt really worked or really opened anything. It was beautiful, but my heart said no, not yet. And then I met a Kabbalist, and I studied with this Kabbalist for about 5 years. I traveled around with him, and then that didn't work because it wasn't real Kabbalah. And then I just left it and just went on with my work, with my art and all that stuff. And then I came across Rav Lightman and read some of what he wrote, and all of a sudden, boom, everything. And it wasn't him. It was like he was conveying from the lineage of the real Kabbalists. And all of a sudden, all these questions went, oh. And I got it, and it was kind of what I thought in a way, but way beyond that. And things started coming together and making sense. That was about 23, 24 years ago that I came across him, met him, and there's no big ending to this story. That's the end. So far, okay.
Or to be continued.
Yeah, I guess this is the continuation of it. I want to share it with you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Tony. Next question is from Adrienne Champagne McNeil. Hi, Adrienne from Canada. Thank you so much for these precious teachings. For what purpose would God gift someone with a mystical experience of complete union and light, and then has not reconnected since? Adrienne experienced this 34 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Well, for what reason? To awaken us, to give us a target, to make us try to digest this in a way that didn't contradict and make us feel that we are not in connection and haven't been for however many decades. I know what you're talking about. It shows a person that the world that we see is not the way that it is, and yet there is something. And that something is not meant to be alone. Its unity and aloneness are not the same thing. And the separation that you feel from it is a good thing. It's like a love affair. It's a longing to understand this and incorporate it into a conscious, ongoing, daily way of being. And it gave you a hunger, and it gave you a desire, a need for the right thing. And this thing, I'm certain that this thing is, even though you haven't been in touch with it for however long you said, it's more real to you than the world and everything that presents itself on a daily basis. That's what you feel is ultimately the truth, and it is. But we have to learn to live in that place. So that's what the path and methodology is about. How do you live in complete interconnection, in the unity of all of nature in a good and comfortable way? How do you accept eternity? How do you accept that complete fulfillment that you tasted, that you glimpsed as an ongoing reality? We do it not by receiving it, which is impossible and just will blow us out of the picture, but you can only experience that with others and in order to give, because that's what you experienced, is the pure giving quality that we call unity. So it gave you the right hunger.
Hey, Tony, Paul Maritha has a question that connects back to abilities beyond the physical. When an egoistic person acquires abilities beyond the physical without first developing altruism or care for the other, isn't that dangerous for other people without similar powers, because they could use the power for manipulation, etc.?
Well, okay, good question. First of all, it's not a power. To be able to sense things is not a power. It's I'll just leave that there. There is a fail-safe mechanism in Kabbalah that you don't get to attain without changing yourself. And the direction of the change is towards what we would call, it's an ethical and moral change because it's based on the one law behind nature, which is the only law, the one out of which all other forces come. The more you internally become like this, the more inclusive your experience is and the more sensation you have of a greater and greater whole. It's a fail-safe. You don't come to that complete interconnection unless you have annulled and given yourself to the law itself, to the giving intention on a greater and greater intensity. So there's no way that a person learning real spirituality will do damage to anybody. And don't worry, people who have these kinds of abilities and are not developed spiritually also really have no power. The only power they have is our ignorance. That's all. It's not a real power. Mary.
Okay, next question from Stephanos. How does believing in the crucifixion of Jesus bring us into spirituality?
I don't know. I'm not a Christian, and I don't know. I don't get into sort of comparative languages and comparative paths. I am a practitioner, an expert on the path of Kabbalah, and anybody learning the law directly, that is the law of nature directly, and how all of this works, will be able to see from that place what something like like you described, what that would be inside of you, what that would mean in your development. But I really can't comment on that.
Okay, next question is from Kevin Long. What does it mean to move the world inside us?
Well, it is inside us. We're not moving it there. Let's put it this way. If you think of the world as being physical objects and all of that separated in space and time, if you think that that's what life is made of, you being positioned physically in a geographical location and all that stuff, and hard objects and strong, highly delineated separations, then you're not going to be able to put the world in your heart without tearing your heart apart with the first, trying to get the first building in. What it means is that it's a question about what is the world really. The world is made out of relationship. Our experience of life is made out of an emotive sensation that connects us to others, and everything is made only, and the things that we see. There is nothing that we look at that isn't in fact in us, exists only as an emotion, an attitude, and an intention. Everything we see evokes, it's not that it evokes it, that is what it is. The object isn't there first, and then there is the attitude. The heart is there first, and it projects this as though it were out in the world because of our sensation of disconnection from things. We don't see how our attitude and our heart is our life. So the world is already inside of us, and we have connection to everything in the world. It already is in us. And fundamentally, it means that the way that we emote and feel about the things that we the connection that we have in our heart to the things that we think we're seeing, that is the world.
Okay, next question, Tony, comes from Lawrence Pipkin, viewing on Facebook. Is intentionality in Kabbalah the same as manifestation, or are they just related concepts?
No, they're not related. If I'm understanding what you're saying, because you could mean many things by those words, manifestation is something like outcome, present and perceptible as a result. It's like cause and effect. You know, you manifest something in the world, it appears as though before you. Or are you talking about the process of what makes the world appear the way that it is? Intentionality, this is very difficult. What an intention is something that a person has to work very hard in relation to other people to even detect where that might be in our responses. Usually it's too late. Usually the desire moves into action without us catching what we want out of it. Who are we directing it towards? For whose fulfillment is a thing happening? This is the primary aspect of creation, is that the initial thought determines the outcome. But if you don't know what your initial thought is, if you have no connection to the initial thought, then there is no intentional process for you. The original thought is not a thought. It's like it is an impulse for whose benefit a certain thought would turn into a desire. A desire would turn into a thought. Sorry, it goes the other way. Desire turns in impulse. For whom? Desire, thought, go get it, action. But the only thing that can happen, and the only quality that we can experience out of something like that, is in the original. For whom did we want this for? Because if we want it only for ourselves, usually the manifestation of it is an event that is not good for us or for anybody. Ultimately, if the reason, the impulse, the original impulse for behind the desire is for the good, a shared good, then the outcome is always good. It can only be what that original impulse is if we learn where that is and how to engage it.
Okay, before I move on to the next question, Tony, we have several other locations that I want to share. It's really amazing, the web of desire that's here joining to connect today. We have Brazil, living in Canada now, the UK, Ireland, Nova Scotia, Canada, Dublin, Ireland, Iraq, Dahab, Sinai, in Egypt, Netherlands, Columbus, Ohio, Providence, Rhode Island, Stockholm, Sweden, Nepal, Hamburg, Germany, and Argentina, and Belize. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. It's always very, very inspiring to see that we're blanketing the world here with our connection. And our next question is from Joseph, wanting to know, how many books do Kabbalah have and how can I practice it?
Well, there are lots of books that about Kabbalah that are not Kabbalah, and there are texts that come out of the real lineage of Kabbalah. But you don't really need lots of them. Guys, would you put a link to our bookstore, please? If in the chats, if you're a student of Kabbalah at KabU, there's a 20% discount for you if you're going to buy book packages in order to study. But those book packages are really, if you want to learn the stuff that you really need to know, that's meant for this generation, that's gonna evolve you immediately, and build your desire, then those are the books you're going to find in the Kabyu book packages at our bookstore. But you have to learn. You need instruction too. It's not just that a person can read original texts and learn by themselves. You need the oral instruction to keep targeting you, so that you don't go off course, because these things are either you hear them with your ego, or they challenge your ego, which is a good thing, or you begin to see move towards the direction that it is actually leading you. But we begin reading these books with our ego, and you can't do anything against that, and you will not understand it, and you will become confused. That's why instruction is really important, and why people for thousands of years haven't understood if they weren't being taught, out of the lineage. So that will tell you what books. And by the way, I want to mention that we are having a very special event in Europe, in Holland, on May the 5th to May the 7th. And it's a Kabbalah retreat. It's basically a boot camp, a way of intensive learning with other people. And this is open to everybody. Whether you are already studying with Kabyu or whether you're completely new to it, you will get not only a complete sort of overview of the principles that you need to know, you will also be immersed in an environment that is working according to the laws of nature in this retreat, which is happening at I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Eigenweidse Park in the Netherlands, and it will be like a summer camp kind of. You live together, and you learn together, you have fun together. There's activities together, but it's all focused about the laws of nature and the practical aspects of how to make Kabbalah work in your life. And you can either do it in person if you want to travel there and go there and all that and stay there. But if you can't do that, you can also attend this virtually. So you're going to get the same thing. We have like cameras that follow everything that happens, whether they're inside or whether they're walking in the woods or whether there's a campfire. Everything, you will experience it as somebody there. And what happens when you're in an intensive like this for 3 days is you will progress more in those 3 days than you will learning certainly on your own than you would in a year. You will quickly understand how this works, what the practical aspects of it are, how to do it, and how to connect with other people, even if you don't want to. Something will open, and you'll understand where this connection exists. So you can find out about this event at Kabbalistic.com. And there's that site will tell you everything about it. And there's an early bird special. You don't want to miss out on that, in which you'll get $100 off the ticket price if you're going to go in person, or if you're going to go virtually, $50 off if you are personally an early bird. So take a look at that site and see if that's for you. I highly recommend it. And I'm working, me and some of the instructors are now working on the content for this, and it's going to be wonderful.
Hey, very exciting. Thank you, Tony. Next question. It looks like we still have a minute or two, and there's a few other announcements about how else you can study Kabbalah. From Joseph Hernandez. Hi, Tony. My question is, who introduced Kabbalah officially?
The Creator. We say that the first known Kabbalist was Adam HaRishon. That was 6,000 years ago, a little over 6,000 years ago. He wrote a book, The Angel Raziel, and it's mostly letters and forms and so on, but it was understood by the people that he taught. And after that, Abraham, it evolved, and it reappears with Abraham about 1948 years BCE. And what he taught was Kabbalah, and what he wrote was Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. And what he taught was how to connect and so on. And from him, all of the prophets, the sages of Kabbalah evolved. And but the originator, as far as a human teacher goes, is Adam Harishon. And I think we got to wrap up.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. So if you want, you can join KabU. If you're not already a KabU member, then we invite you to join. You can see the links in the chat. You'll gain access to several Kabbalah courses from beginners to advanced. You'll be part of the world's biggest online Kabbalah community, the ability to ask instructors questions in a student forum, and access to KabU exclusive weekly webinars. Also, you get access to the next Kabbalah Revealed course with Tony that starts on April 9th. So again, check for that in the chat. Or if you want to support KabU, you can do that in a couple of ways. First, you can become a KabU member, and you can also make a donation, which is greatly appreciated because we put that toward all of our broadcast productions and live events and maintaining our online services. So you can check the links for that in the chat. So again, thank you for joining. Really amazing questions today. This was such a great session, and always wonderful to be with you, Tony.
Thanks so much, Mary. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it was good. And I hope it's inspired you. If you're a student, go deeper. And if you're not, become a student. Why not? You're here already. See ya.